Thank you. Thank you all for the invitation to this conference. It's an honor. I feel like a minority, but I feel well in this highly non-law group. I will try to convince you that law and pedagogy equals true love. And that may be hard for some of you. So I better get at it. But a little about my background. I have been working 15 years as a researcher at the law faculty. I wrote my PhD on part-time work, temporary work. You cannot pretend that's gender neutral. It happened to be immigrants and women working part-time and temporary, and plus students. That made me look into also the education. What happens? Why is the employment market so gender divided? After my PhD, I continued with a postdoctor in education law, the first one ever at the University of Oslo. It was a unique cooperation between the Faculty of Law and Faculty of Education. And that really gave insights into method. How do teachers and leaders perceive the law? How do lawyers understand that the law is not understood sometimes? Usually, every day in the week, I usually go to my PwC law firm where I'm chairing, I'm the boss of the employment law department, but part-time, 20% position, I'm working at the university, and I love it, that part of the day. Here's the agenda, responsible leadership. I have color-coded this presentation. Law is blue, clear mind. Reality is red. I'm putting in some alarming statistics. And I'm giving you the color of green. You are the holders of the key of solving the global problem, so nothing less than that. I'm sharing the presentation with all of you afterwards, so just so that you know that. And I might as well just start. As I said, law and pedagogy equals true love. I will describe in the following how the law is a tool to secure responsible leadership from a law perspective. And this is a law, is only a tool. It's never better than the person using it, the tool. So if we're going to respond to global challenges, we need to design good law. And that design has to be made with those in your profession. So first of all, what is the purpose of the law? Well, it gives rights and it gives obligations. Somebody is obligated to fulfill the rights. The rights are stated in international law, and several of the presentators today have talked about that. The conventions, the international law, they are interpreted by human rights committees, but the rights need to be fulfilled in national law and reality. And that reality is different from all different countries. But globally, we know that law is the most efficient tool to implement the rights nationally. And I'm not underscoring or undermining that economy does not play in here, what the politicians can do. But the law is stating the minimum rights. The school leaders, when the law is in place, it is the school leaders who are obligated to fulfill the right, and the teachers will follow the instructions from the leaders. This is the employment law lawyer talking. The teacher's professional judgment in choice of pedagogic strategy belongs to the teachers. That's a professional judgment. But the outer limits, the frames, are set by legislation. And this means that both leaders and teachers need to know the law. And I see, at least speaking from the Nordic countries, more and more law is put into the education of school leaders, both in kindergarten, school, and even at the university level. The demand of law is really all surrounding us. We make decisions every day, never giving a thought that it's actually law that we're doing. Employment law I've mentioned, but it's also international. Put international. part of it. Personal data protection, GDPR, international or cross-border, transnational, that's another word. Same thing. It is applied nationally, not locally at the company level. Individual administrative decisions, that is very national, the rules about it, the procedures. We use it on a daily basis as leaders. And we never think about it as being a legal decision. We just know how it's supposed to be done. In the following, I will deal with 2 human rights. The right to education, which is already talked about, and the right to gender equality. And I'm addressing this as a global challenge that we need a law to be used by school leaders and teachers. And these rights must be implemented into national law and practice. I will later on focus some on the boys as a concern, but we know from Malala that that's a concern for girls, and we know that the challenges differ from different countries. So I'm talking here about a gender equality, boys and girls. The lens needs to be there. And there, I'm going to start with the legal right to education as a human right. It is stated in the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. Articles 28 and Articles 29 talk about education as a fundamental right. We have, these 2 articles need to be interpreted in light of the other articles in this convention. We have the right of non-discrimination in Article 2, has to be put on as a filter on that how we interpret Article 28 and 29. The same thing for Article 3, the best interest of the child, and the principle of the right to be heard, which Greta Thunberg is really showing a face to. The legal right to education is a fundamental human right stated in many conventions. So my picking of these 2 conventions is not giving you an exhaustive list, but I have to try to keep it within a short time frame in this afternoon. So the other convention that I would like to mention is the UN Convention on the Elimination of all kinds of discrimination against women. If that convention needs a new name, it could be a gender neutral. But Article 10 states education, and it states why it has a gender perspective in Article 5A, which is really the dynamite you can get in law. Article 5A tells us that those countries that have signed this convention are to modify the social and cultural patterns of conduct of men and women with a view of achieving the elimination of prejudices and customary and all other practices, this is all covering, which are based on the idea of the inferiority or the superiority of either of the sexes or on stereotyped roles for men and women. Why are stereotypes mentioned in this article? Does that affect the way we learn or are giving the opportunity to learn? So if we combine these 2 fundamental human rights into one, you say equal rights to education regardless of sex. Boys and girls may be different, but regardless of our differences, we are entitled to equal opportunities to learn. So I'll come back to this topic and elaborate a little bit later. I was asked to give a little law course, and here it is, 2 minutes. I've been walking through some conventions. We have law at 3 levels. We have UN conventions, and we've been so fortunate to have a representation about the UNESCO, and they have lots of reports about education. We have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We have the ILO, International Labor Organization, which also talks about lifelong learning. And that is the new word we're going to talk about in the future, because we need to have our basic professional education at the core platform, but we need to continue to learn. Then at the second level, we have the geographical, the regional agreements, like the Inter-American Convention on Human Rights, which also states about education and equality. The same thing goes for the African Convention on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. And we have the EU, PISA, OECD. We have the European Convention on Human Rights. So that is level 1, the sky. And then we have the regional. How do we solve it in our region? And then we have all the national level. And of course, being Norwegian, I could have given this presentation in Norwegian, but I'm going to give some examples from Norwegian law. Because in most countries, you'll have the right to education and the right to equal treatment regardless of sex stated in the Constitution. In Norway, we have education in section 109, and in section 98 says equal opportunities. We have the Kindergarten Act, the Education Act, and the Act on Universities and Colleges. They have all three in their initial paragraph. What's the purpose of these institutions? It's about what you've been talking about this all day, creating this whole human beings contributing to society, all stating what does it mean to get an education, regardless of sex, equal opportunities. We have school inspections monitoring if and how these rights are being fulfilled. And we have this stated in all three acts that you see, kindergarten education, and the Municipality Act, which is into the public sector. We have hundreds of regulations. It's a forest, you can walk, you get lost. But we need to have a focus on the positive aspect that we are securing certain rights. And who is responsible to secure that right? It's you. I'm just to teach about the law. But the mandate of schools is to educate the children, provide a common platform of values and human rights, and of course, in addition to curriculums in various subjects. My point is here that of the human rights stated in the initial sections of these acts, equal opportunities regardless of gender, ethnicity, as well as socioeconomic background described as a core value in the initial section. Much more could be said about that section. It's very long and extensive. But it is training in democratic values, tolerance to foster inclusive and non-discriminatory partnership into society. And it's combining that human platform into that practical learning. How do we do that? Well, in my perspective, the law is a handrail for school leaders and teachers. The law is objective, stating an undisputable right. It always has a core. You can take away some layers on the outside, but it has a core. You cannot take away all parts of the law. The teachers are the professionals, holders of the keys of pedagogy, finding the way to implement the legal right. So, as long as it is a right, it is not a right to provide equal rights to boys and girls. It's not up to a personal opinion, up to parents or individual school leaders and teachers. And this is why the love comes in. And now I'm done with a clear blue thought. We're going to a reality, a global problem. And even though I'm focusing right here on boys, it's not saying that I don't see that it's a problem with girls as well. I want you to think the lens is neutral, looking at gender. But we have the OECD 2012, the ABC of Gender Equality in Education, Aptitude, Behavior, Confidence, really mapping that boys are underperforming at schools. We have a very fresh report from 2018, the gender gap in educational outcomes in Norway. The girls are the winners. That's a good thing for the girls. Part of it. But if the boys are completely absent in some fields in education, it's not so good. We have the UN reports from Asia, from why are boys underperforming in education, a gender analysis of 4 Asia-Pacific countries. And as I'm giving you the slides, you can look through yourself. So I'm going through the regional reports, and I'm stepping down to the Norwegian setting. And you can try to think in your own country. What is it like? Here I'm showing you the grades from 10th grade, and you'll see that it's not one single, it's in the right-hand corner, it's not a single subject where the boys are excelling. Why is that? Is a teacher on purpose making the boys underperform? I don't think so. Same thing for high school. It's pretty dramatic. And it is also consistent over many years. And we're seeing the results in the employment market. Of course, it's not pure science for me to show you 4 professions like law, medicine, dentistry, psychology, because we have boys excelling in engineering, computer, and some other areas. But in these professions I'm showing you now, law, medicine, dentist, these used to be all male-dominated professions. It's pretty dramatic when lawyers, medicine, dentist, psychology, and I could add veterinarian, which is almost 100%, they don't have male professionals in a few years. So now they're talking about quotas, making quotas for the men, because they say we cannot have a society where we don't have male psychologists. They should look further down to the school and kindergartens. We are not giving the boys equal opportunities. Okay, I'm going back, adding a little law. Who remembers Article 5A? I have it embroidered on my wall. Gender stereotypes provide different learning opportunities. Because what all these international reports shows us is that regardless of different cultures, traditions, historic and religious backgrounds, boys underperform. So we're more equal than we are different. Girls take over previously male-dominated professions of work, and that's simply because more women, they don't no longer return to their house, to housekeeping when they marry. So the competition at the workplaces is much tougher than it used to be. Depending on your professional background, you look differently for answers. You search. Psychologists, biologists, neuroscientists, they've been searching. Can we find a biological explanation to this fact? And the researchers conclude that even though even though there are differences, the individual differences between boys and girls outgrows that part. So we cannot make all male, all female typical education to help up. The good thing about the law is it never asks for that kind of reason. It demands equal rights. So this means we have to think out how. Oh, we'll go and ask the teachers. They do the job. But I think it is proven by so many reports now that different expectations to girls and boys provide different opportunities to practice and train the skill sets that are necessary for education. So the important question teachers must ask is really, and then that's what you've been doing for years, probably is what you're feeling. Are boys and girls being equally engaged by activities verbally and physically? So we need to challenge ourselves even more. Are we aware how gender stereotyping from teachers and parents affect the true learning outcome? Girls need to be obedient. Well, that seems to be a good trait if you're going to be successful in the current school system. But it may hamper the creativity, the dareness to go out and try new technology. But I think the boys we have to look into the excuses. Boys are a bit active, they mature later than girls, and later on they catch up. Well, the statistics shows that they do not catch up. So really we have to look into the competences. What are we talking about in the various activities, in the various subjects? How can we do it better? Because we're not afraid. Boys don't read well enough. That's why they struggle in math. How can we be more creative in teaching reading? Does it have to be from a book? Or can we read from other things or make shapes and letters by hammering nails around a car if that's necessary? Are girls getting the necessary stimulation to look and be enthused by cars or technology? These are the questions. Really, we're talking about competition law. If we do not provide equal learning opportunities, there is no level playing field. There is no equal competition chances. And now I'm going to my third and pretty much ending the last part of this presentation, the green, which is you. Equal learning opportunities needs to be integrated in the pedagogical toolbox. And I have 2 stars and 2 slides. Star 1, preconditions. School leaders and teachers must know the law, learn to see the gender stereotyping in everyday activities, and teachers and school leaders need to be given examples in all courses. Subjects. It's so hard to see these things because this is the tradition, how we perceive the world. This is how we're taught. It's like being instead of, you don't see the forest or the tree because of all of the trees standing in the forest. It starts in the kindergarten. It starts really at home. But we need more speakers than me have talked about the social skills, the cooperation, patience, listening, language development. What do we learn from fighting games versus drawing game? Do we sit and talk while doing crafts? What do they learn? Do we sit and talk with the boys who play with the cars? Can we train shapes and fine motoric skills? How do we design activities to secure equal learning opportunities? So this is the second star. Teachers must repeatedly ask themselves if the way the teaching is carried out catches boys and girls equally. And this is a very complex life society. It's not a simple simple answer to the question because we are multifaceted, counterproductive factors like my previous talker talked about. We have a lot of work to be done in this field. Just a single thing is in junior high school, we have a lot of acceptance for boys playing computer games. Do the parents ask what type of learning output they have from those games? Because research does show that the girls' games are more learning rewarding. Okay, your job, responsible leadership. Who decides the work, methods, and focus areas at schools? It's decided at the leadership at national level, so politicians are important. But it must be stated in annual goal documents, and it must be measured. Same thing, what gets measured, what gets done. That's what we know from company law. So it needs to be integrated as a perspective in every subject, the equal opportunities. And then teachers need help, they need training to secure that they have examples. Who is responsible is the leadership. They are responsible to secure that legal obligations are fulfilled at schools. You're responsible to have the human rights put down into practice. School and kindergarten must implement the rights of students in education. We must have gentle guidance, not the very mean and evil inspections, but helpful, so we'll learn. You can't take one course and be equalized. It's a way of thinking that has to be nourished. I've added a third point here on this slide saying courses on norm-critical pedagogy. And I've put it in writing in brackets, gender stereotyping needs to be courses to reflect how we're as a help to see how different treatment of boys and girls actually can hamper education. And this term, just make a note of it. It's going to be more of that discussion in the years to come. And as nature is, and the globe, is a hot topic in many ways, equal learning opportunities are a condition for society's upkeeping of welfare and sustainable solutions. We need all the brain power that is. And this brings me back to the human rights stated as the UN Sustainable Development Goals, number 4, education, and number 5, gender equality. So I hope this little law course gave some meaning about how the law is important and how you have to implement it. Thank you for your attention. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you.